Hey there, welcome to this new lesson. Now we are ready to start making the most of our illustrations. First of all, we'll be doing the sketch and the structure. Right now, as you can see, I'm making the last illustration, which is based on a Caoineag, a sort of demon. According to the legend, this spirit inhabits in waterfalls and it causes the death of those who get to hear her moans and cries. It's a woman, and her appearance reminds me of the ring girl, kind of. I decided to represent her with long, wet, straight, and dark hair, and really skinny. To get this skinny effect, what I'm going to do is mark the joints, emphasize them, and make the bones specially visible, like the knees, the ankles, the elbows, the shoulders, and so on. As I also wanted to make her wear some kind of clothing, I'm drawing a kind of dress or quite a long skirt because I imagine her sitting next to a waterfall or a place with water and the clothing floating on the surface of the water. Guys, this is an effect pretty difficult to get, so I'll be drawing it in the easiest way possible to include it afterwards in the final composition. Right now, I'm working in an A4 format, as I don't intend, at least for the moment, to print it. I'll use a RGB mode color and 150 pixels per inch to enhance details. We already know that we don't need to use a really high resolution, like 300 pixels, if our drawing will be shared in any social media, because it will only increase the file's weight. So I think 72 would be fine in this case. However, I've decided to work with an intermediate value, so I set it at 150. What I'm doing now is cleaning the initial sketch a little bit. I know that I told you before that it doesn't need to be so clean or polished, but in this case it was too unclean, so we don't need to be way too careful when doing this sketch since we'll be able to improve it afterwards. This is why I told you all this stuff about the file and the format, because the best thing would be that our drawings were coherent and, how to say it, in tune with each other. I must admit that since the course began, I'm really curious about your interpretations of the same description that I used. Thus, I encourage you to try to imitate what I'm showing you in this course. Okay, you could also try to look for other descriptions or myths. You don't need to do what I'm doing, but the ideal actually would be to do an interpretation of the same text I'll be providing you. But as I said, that's up to you. Okay, the sketch is much cleaner now, and what I'm going to do now is well, guys, don't forget to save your work. So, as I was saying, the next step will be coloring the illustration. I've pictured it in subdued colors and gray shades. So, I'll be working with this range of colors. First, let's use a base color. I haven't said anything about the tools I'm using. So, if you have a look at the panel on the down right corner, you'll see that I'm using the preset brushes of Photoshop. So, in the first place, we have Pencil Brush by Kyle Webster, and in the second place, the one I've selected, which I'm going to use to color the drawing right now. The first one is to make the sketch. It is the gray outline, and the second one to color the drawing. And well, these are basically the two brushes I've used for this course. I'm not sure, but I believe you can find them on Photoshop site. Well, as you can see, I'm cleaning the edges and the outline to be able to do a selection afterwards without changing the color. Guys, I know that it can be quite tiresome, but I promise it will help us later since we won't need to keep erasing all the time. Let's see this as a base layer to work on it safely later on. As you can notice, I've made a selection, so we don't need to be particularly careful when coloring it now, because we'll be coloring only which is inside the selection. Okay, as you can see, I'm painting the hair black. Why not? I mean, I know it's not in the description, but as you know, imagination plays a significant role when turning a text into a drawing. And guys, this situation happens much more frequently than we think. For instance, when doing a job for a video game or for a book based on a specific description, we'll need to use our imagination to do this, and it will be very useful. Guys, let's try out and play around with different light effects. In my case, I'm working with blue shades. I'm playing around with saturation and light to give volume to our illustration. Well, I'm using this blue shade, but I'm not really happy with it, since it reminds me of the movie I just mentioned, so probably I'll be changing the color later. And perhaps I'll opt for brown tones, don't know. I won't expand more on the lighting effects. I just want you to keep in mind that this will help us to add volume and depth. So the upper side of the woman would be almost finished, and then I'll be doing the skirt, perhaps using darker tones than the hair. Guys, very important. I'm placing the spotlight in the right side, which means the beam of light goes from right to left. Nope. I don't like the lighting effects on the hair, so I leave these lines as if they were grey hair or something like that. Yeah. Let's move on to the skirt now and see if I can solve this thing with the color. I don't like it, but at the same time, I don't want to opt for green shades neither, and I don't want to lose the effect created by this gloomy character, so I want to prioritize the clothing. If this happens to you, it is if you don't like the color, I recommend you to start with a base color and then change it pressing Ctrl U to modify tone parameters such as the lightness, color, and saturation. I'm just correcting these little things, adding and deleting unnecessary strokes and stuff we don't want to have in our drawing. Well, guys, as we did with the rest of the body, we are going to include lighting effects to the skirt. And this would be the final step. I don't want to make it too complicated. What I want to do now, I'll explain it right now. Here we have a texture layer, and I'm going to put it in multiplied mode. This is the effect we get. Cool, right? I know that I just keep repeating it over and over, but I want to give it the effect of a sketchbook. I've taken it from the Spider Witch movie, and I'm not going to do exactly, but pretty similar. In the movie, they also use some descriptions. In my case, however, I'm going to include a brief description under the illustration and above it, the name. I'll be also including some extra sketches of this character I just made. So guys, we need to be extremely creative when working with this because we'll be designing this page, the composition basing on the character we've created. Okay, let's turn our imagination on. For the moment, I leave it like this and I'll focus on making these little sketches next to the character. Remember the description? It says that this is a mythological creature which inhabits lakes and waterfalls, so I'm drawing here a pretty simple drawing of a waterfall. I think that adding some notes fits perfectly with the whole composition and the aesthetic of our drawing. What do you think? Let's make now the profile of the creature, okay? I want her to have sharp-featured face. Plus, we can use hatching to add shadows, which gives our illustration a cool pencil drawing effect. According to the legend, if you remember, she is said to be crying and lamenting, so I've interpreted this description and I've decided to represent her crying and with a sad expression. Until now, the eyes have been hidden, so I'll draw them, and I think it would be great if they were completely empty. Let's create this surprised expression as if someone had come across her. Remember that she doesn't like to be seen. Okay, let's keep adding the shadows by hatching. Yeah, like that. Guys, don't forget to add notes to the composition. I'll also give you this texture I'm using that so that you can work along the same lines as I'm using. Another thing I also wanted to tell you is that I'm making all these as it were hand-drawn except for the description, which is typed because I want it to be readable. Afterwards, I'm going to change the text of above, the name of the creature, and I'll be using the trust hand typography so that all the elements fit together. Yeah, I think it's more balanced. As you can see, I'm just adding some details to the illustration. Well, as there are tons of them, it's a bit complicated at the beginning. Here it is. Okay, I find it too thick, so I'll change the width and the size and also the tone. Let's rasterize the layer, select Modify, and in the Contract option, I've set it at 4. And then from here we are going to invert it and then delete it. See? The stroke is much thinner and cleaner. And now I'm going to organize the text in different columns. Okay. And this is almost everything regarding the text. Display it in a readable way. Don't add too much text. Set the columns at a proper distance. Use a lower typography and so on. This would be the end of the lesson. We are going to follow the same steps for the other creatures. See you in the next one. Bye!